It's Earth Hour. We have a commitment towards this mother environment. Every piece, if we take for our own personal needs, it must doubly ensure that we really need it. Otherwise, spare it. So, we have a commitment to preserve this nature. Observe Earth Hour every hour. Welcome once again to News Analysis. News Analysis, a weekly magazine on current affairs. To begin with the main points in a nutshell. French jet destroys Libya plane. Syria, unrest, government pledges political reforms. NATO agrees to take command of no-fly zone in Libya. Elizabeth Taylor at Lustrous Pinnacle of Hollywood Glamour. Many US blacks moving to South, a reversing trend. Japan tsunami toll tops 10,000 2 weeks after quake. And now the news in detail. French jet destroys Libya plane. A French warplane has been destroyed by Libyan aircraft that have been flying in a breach of the UN no-fly zone, French officials say. The smaller trainer aircraft had just landed in the besieged city of Misrata when it was attacked, they say. It is the first incident of its kind since enforcement of the zone began. Meanwhile, Turkey's foreign minister has said NATO will take command of the international mission in Libya within a day or two. Compromise has been reached in principle in a very short time. Foreign Minister Ahmed Davutoglu was quoted as saying after a conference call with his US, French and British counterparts. The operation will be handed over to NATO completely. Turkey, a NATO member, had earlier raised objections to the organization taking command. Dozens of coalition missiles have already hit military bases with the aim of ending Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi's ability to launch air attacks. UK officials said on Wednesday that Libya's air force no longer existed as a fighting force. Initial reports of the French action said the Libyan plane, a G-2 Galeb, with a single engine was in the air when it was hit. But French military spokesman Colonel Thierry Bocard later said the plane had just landed when the attack took place. Syria, unrest, government pledges political reforms. Syrian leaders have pledged to introduce reforms to meet the demands of protesters after days of violence in the southern city of Daraa. Officials promised to study the need for lifting the state of emergency in place since 1963. The government also said it would bring to trial those suspected of killing several protesters in Daraa. President Bashar al-Assad later ordered the release of everyone arrested during the recent events, state media said. Presidential spokeswoman Bouthania Shaban blamed outside agitators for whipping up trouble and denied that the government had ordered security forces to open fire on protesters. But she said this did not mean mistakes had not been made. We should not confuse the behavior of an individual and the desire and determination of President Bashar al-Assad to move Syria to more prosperity, she told a news conference in Damascus. NATO agrees to take command of no-fly zone in Libya. NATO will assume leadership from the United States of patrolling the skies over Libya, but the military alliance remains divided over who will command aggressive coalition airstrikes in Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi's ground troops, NATO and American officials said on Thursday. After a day of confusion and conflicting reports out of NATO headquarters in Brussels, Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton announced late Thursday in Washington that NATO had agreed to lead the allies in maintaining the no-fly zone. Effectively, that means the planes from NATO countries will fly missions over Libya with little fear of being shot down, since Tomahawk missiles, most of them American, largely destroyed Colonel Gaddafi's air defense and air force last weekend. But NATO and American officials said NATO had balked at assuming responsibility, at least for now, of what military officials call the no-drive zone, which would entail bombing Colonel Gaddafi's ground forces, tanks and artillery that are massing outside crucial Libyan cities, and doing so without inflicting casualties on civilians. Late Thursday night, a senior Obama administration official insisted that NATO had agreed to assume responsibility for the no-fly and no-drive zones, but said the details remain to be worked out. The official statement appeared to contradict those of the Secretary General of NATO, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who said in Brussels earlier Thursday that NATO was still considering whether to take on border responsibility for the war. A NATO official said that two member nations, Germany and Turkey, objected to NATO participating in strikes that they consider beyond the mandate of the United Nations Security Council resolution that authorized the military action in Libya. The announcement of at least a partial handoff of responsibility to NATO came only 5 days after the conflict started and reflected the intense pressure on President Obama to deliver on his promise that the United States would step back within days, not weeks, from the command of the effort. Elizabeth Taylor, a lustrous pinnacle of Hollywood glamour. Elizabeth Taylor, the actress who dazzled generations of moviegoers with her stunning beauty and whose name was synonymous with Hollywood glamour, died on Wednesday in Los Angeles. She was 79. A spokeswoman at Cedar Sinai Medical Center said Ms. Taylor died at 1:28 a.m. Pacific time. Her publicist, Sally Morrison, said the cause was complications of congestive heart failure. Ms. Taylor had a series of medical setbacks over the years and was hospitalized 6 weeks ago with heart problems. In a world of flickering images, Elizabeth Taylor was a constant star. First appearing on screen at the age of 10, she grew up there, never passing through an awkward age. It was one quick leap from National Velvet to A Place in the Sun, and from there to Cleopatra, as she was indelibly transferred from vulnerable child actress into a voluptuous film queen. In a career of some 70 years and more than 50 films, she won the 2 Academy Awards as Best Actress for her performances as a call girl in Butterfield 8, 1960, and as the acid-tongued Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, 1966. Mike Nichols, who directed her Virginia Woolf, considered her one of the greatest cinema actresses. When Ms. Taylor was honored in 1986 by the Film Society of Lincoln Center, Vincent Canby wrote in the New York Times, "More than anyone else, I can think of Elizabeth Taylor represents the complete movie phenomenon. What movies are as an art and an industry, and what they have meant to those of us who have grown up watching them in the dark." Ms. Taylor's popularity endured throughout her life, but critics were sometimes reserved in their praise of her acting. In that sense, she may have been upstaged by her own striking beauty. Could anyone as lovely as Elizabeth Taylor also be talented? The answer, of course, was yes. Given her lack of professional training, the range of her acting was surprisingly wide. She played predatory vixens and wounded victims. She was Cleopatra of the Burnished Bars, Tennessee Williams, Maggie the Cat, Catherine Hawley, who confronted terror suddenly last summer, and Shakespeare's Kate. Her melodramatic heroines would have been at home on soap operas. Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who directed her suddenly last summer, and Cleopatra, saw her for the first time in Cannes when she was 18. She was the most incredible vision of loveliness I have ever seen in my life, he said, and she was sheer innocence. Mankiewicz admired her professionalism. Whatever the script called for, she played it, he said. The thread that goes through the whole is that a woman who is an honest performer, therein lies her identity. It was also Mankiewicz who said that for Miss Taylor, living life was a kind of acting. That is, she lived her life in screen time.